Hello and welcome to UC Today. I'm Tom Wright and I'm delighted to be joined by Rob from Martello. How's it going, Rob?
It's going well. Thanks, Tom. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And we're going to be talking about how businesses can really get sort of top quality performance out of their Microsoft Teams setup today. And I wonder if you could start by just talking through why it's really important to be kind of monitoring the service that the businesses are getting through Teams.
Yeah, I think there's the leading factor is just the growing importance of Teams. So, Teams is becoming a critical component of any enterprise beyond just chat, but video and collaboration, and really becoming embedded in other software and processes that an organization relies on day to day. So it's become very much mission critical. And then on the other hand, there's a significant number of moving parts behind this, whether it's the performance in the Microsoft data center, the network performance across the internet, network performance inside of your own enterprise, and how you're using VPNs and proxies and all that sort of thing. And with people working in different locations, whether that's home, you know, uh, coffee locations, things like that. There's an unpredictable portion of the network that needs to be understood as well. And then the endpoint itself, right? So we've got a Teams client running on some laptop or desktop, and other applications are competing for performance on that machine. So a lot of things that must be looked at in order to understand if Teams is performing well.
Yeah, and you actually touched on some bits of my next question, actually. But I guess it's quite difficult to have complete visibility of all of these things that could potentially take teams down, particularly the ones that don't exist actually within inside teams.
Exactly, and Microsoft does a great job of providing visibility into the Microsoft portion, right? So they publish service level agreements, they have a status portal, so you can see how things are performing on the Microsoft side. But as we kind of already touched on a little bit, there's just so much in between Microsoft and the end user that also must work in tandem, especially for real-time communication. It's very, very sensitive to any disruptions or latency across that network. We've seen a lot of um, office architectures that are just haven't been kept up to date, especially with the adoption of video, right? So a lot of these offices may have been designed for voice, and now you throw in video and screen sharing on top, and people returning back to offices, and unfortunately, organizations are finding out the hard way that many of these offices haven't been designed with the capacity that video brings, especially since maybe before the pandemic not everybody was having a Teams interaction or a rich video experience when they interacted with their colleagues. Being in home offices through the pandemic and then coming back to the office, for those of us who have come back to the office, we've brought those video behaviors with us. And so it's put quite a bit of strain on the architecture in the offices and how they're going to be, supporting users going forward.
Yeah, but Microsoft does itself offer some sort of tools to have a bit of visibility with this, doesn't it? I wanted to ask you particularly about call quality dashboard. I wonder if first perhaps you could just kind of talk us through what that is, the benefits it has, and then we can look at how you at Martello build on top of that.
Yeah, great question. So Microsoft gathers call quality data about every Teams experience, and that's something that's baked into the Teams client. So every time you have a meeting, you call someone, there's some information being captured from Microsoft about the network conditions of the network at that time, performance metrics, who you're calling, all those kinds of things, the ISP that's being used. So there's quite a bit of information that's quite valuable there in terms of understanding uh, who's having a bad call or which meetings are, considered to be of poor quality. And, customers are getting reasonable value out of that, I would say. I mean, there is some difficulty in getting it set up and getting it used, but it is a very valuable data source to understand who in the organization is having a poor experience. It's not necessarily the be all end all, as we just talked about in the previous question, all the things that must work in tandem. The call quality data cannot reveal that. It just tells us that, Tom and Rob had a call yesterday afternoon. It didn't look like it was a very bad call, but using that data source, we really have no idea as to why.
Okay, so it sounds like it throws up quite a lot of useful information, but I guess, maybe it's a challenge for businesses to turn that into something actionable that they can really kind of respond to. So can you talk through how you and Martello are taking some of that data, building on it, and presenting something really useful to businesses?
Absolutely. So That's one of the more important data sources that we ingest into our platform, Martello Vantage DX, as a starting point to understand where should you spend your time. So we walk a customer through this narrative that we call our PRO narrative, or prioritize, resolve, optimize. And the prioritize piece starts with this call quality data, right? So a lot of organizations come to us, they say, listen, we've rolled out Teams sometime over the last year or two. Everybody is using it, but we know that there's some rough edges, right? Not everybody's having a great experience. So what can we do about that? And the call quality data is not going to give them that answer. So we give the call quality data to the customer as a way to reaffirm, yes, you're having problems in Germany in your office, or Rob and Tom are having problems. To identify where you prioritize your time. But then very quickly we want to move into the resolve part. Okay, I'm trying to understand, okay, if Rob and Tom are chronically having bad performance issues calling each other, why? And so we can deploy some network diagnostics that's going to give us what we call mapping out the route to the cloud. So now we're going to see what does, like for instance, if we use Tom, use an example, what does your connection look like between your endpoint and the Microsoft data center? And so you have some local network aspects, you have your ISP, maybe there's a VPN, and then you have the entry into the Microsoft front doors and data center. And each hop along that way can introduce some latency or packet loss, which will affect your ability to have a good experience with Teams. So that's one element where we get that resolve piece. And then, moving to the optimized piece, we also want to make sure that the next set of problems when we solve these are not found by your users or your employees, but rather by our software. So we deploy what we call robots, and these robots are running synthetic transactions, meaning they're interacting with Microsoft 365 and Teams, much like a real user would. So they're holding Teams calls, they're sending email, they're uploading and downloading content to OneDrive, and looking for performance problems with those actions. So all those actions are measured over time. We can spot anomalies, and then we could say something like, well, we see Teams is unavailable in this particular region. And because we know that from the robot, and we can give early advance notice to our customers as a result. One I guess, recent example, we had, a bit of a Teams outage, was it, 2 weeks ago, I want to say now. And the customers who are using our synthetic transactions or these robots were alerted to this outage far earlier than anybody was through Microsoft's Twitter or status pages that announced this to the rest of the world.
Yeah, so I guess, with an outage like that, perhaps this is quite difficult, but maybe in some situations you're able to help a user or get them to change a meeting room or something without them actually kind of experiencing an issue, just to really get ahead of some of the potential problems.
That's it. I mean, a lot of the times it is just communication and having a plan B if something like this is unavailable. So, especially if you're an organization with, 100,000 plus employees, and there's 30-minute window, let's say, of the service being unavailable and it being communicated to those employees that the service is unavailable. That's a lot of potential calls, emails, tickets being created to the support team unnecessarily, when if they got that early notice, 30 minutes earlier, they can proactively communicate to the company and say, listen, this service is unavailable. Here's the approach you should take to mitigate and continue with your business activities. And that's not I wouldn't say that's our go-to value prop, because the reality is Microsoft operates a very reliable service. I can't remember the last time we had a notable outage besides the one we had a couple weeks ago. It's been some time before that. So it's not our core value prop, but day to day there are a lot of issues that come up, whether it's things like tunneling and network configuration, or it just happens to be people in different offices and different locations using different endpoints and trying to boil down, well, which was the problematic component here.
Okay, and I've just got one final question for you, Rob, and I think you guys at Martello are in a great position to kind of look across the whole team's ecosystem. I wonder if you could pick out a couple of trends that you're expecting to be really big as we kind of move through the rest of this year.
Absolutely. So, I mean, Teams adoption has exploded, no doubt about it, right? I mean, I think before the pandemic, they had just passed 10, 20 million, something like that, monthly active users. Now they're, encroaching on 300 million. Microsoft recently announced 12 million PSTN connected users, which is quite an interesting number among their 80 million what they call Teams Phone users, which I think confused a bunch of people because Teams Phone actually encapsulates VoIP and PSTN. But of those 80, we know now, as of the last earnings report, that 12 million of those 80 are PSTN. And for those of you who have seen the Operator Connect program, we expect to see a lot of activity driving that PSTN number up through engagements with the big PSTN operators, whether that's here in Canada, guys like Rogers, or more globally, we've got companies like British Telecom, Orange Business Services that are driving a ton of activity behind Operator Connect and really simplifying the telephony part of this, right? It's typically been a pretty complex deployment, session border controllers on site, and a lot of these companies are modernizing this by providing session border controllers essentially as a service in their own cloud data centers and simplifying this whole experience for users while maintaining that reliability of the telephony portion of the network. So I expect to see a ton of activity behind Operator Connect. And then Operator Connect Mobile, which is very, very early now, I think is an exciting program that Microsoft has launched, tons of activity behind that. And so I look for that to be something we're going to be talking about for the next year or two.
Yeah, certainly an exciting time, and I hope perhaps we can speak later in the year and pick up on some of those trends. But in the meantime, Rob, it's been great talking to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Likewise, thanks so much, Tom. This was great.
Yeah, thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and a share on social media, and we'll see you next time.